We have amongst us Vidya Reddy from Tulir, and with her there's also Nancy who's going to be presenting together. So Tulir Center for the Prevention and Healing of Child Sexual Abuse is a non-profit, non-governmental organization committed to working against child sexual abuse in India and is involved with both direct intervention and advocacy activities at various levels across the country and South Asia region. Tulir's mandate of addressing child sexual abuse, besides public education, includes child focused programs, creation and strengthening of support networks, especially for legal assistance and psychosocial healing of abused children and their families, and developing information resources. Technical assistance and training related to professional response sector involvement are also significant activities besides fostering coalitions and networks to influence policy and legislative initiatives. The strategies which underpins Tulir's programming are designed for broad-scale changes not only for individuals but also of systems and norms. So, Vidya, I welcome you, and today Vidya is going to talk to us about navigating the labyrinth, working towards a common denominator. Thank you.
So we're very interested in looking at large-scale systemic change, and to make uh, the largest stakeholder, which is the government, accountable and responsible for anything which has to be done in terms of redress to sexual abuse. But it is a labyrinth. Uh, as most of us know, just getting a child who needs to be checked in hospital, you keep getting bounced from department to department. So with government also, it is quite a situation. So one of the key factors when we're deciding on working, one of our main agendas of working with government is to see that the change is institutionalized, that any sort of program is institutionalized, so it's sustained over a period of time. It doesn't need an NGO doing its little number each time, and there is a buy-in from government, and so the system will change. With that, hopefully, the attitudinal mindset as well. We do believe that the community has a large role in protecting a child, and that each one of us is responsible and guilty every time a child is abused or every time a child. All of us are involved in prevention and abuse, and we do believe that it takes each one of us to see that a child is protected. But we are also aware of the various sectors involved, specifically professional sectors involved in the same process. But as I said, it is a labyrinth, and navigating your way through it is tough. But we'd like to share with you some of our experiences with working through this labyrinth and how some of our practices have been sustained and have worked. And I'm essentially sharing that lots of us have partnered with government, but I'm essentially sharing a few stories of outcomes which have had tangible impact. Partnership is fine, but tangible impact is also important. As most of you know, this is just old hat, that the fact that is even in the scale of things dealing with children, you look at the more obvious manifestations of disadvantage, which is education, health, sanitation, food security, before you really look at things which impinge on you, but they impinge on the quality of life, like, say, sexual violence does impinge on the quality of life, but it's not like out there. Nobody really looks at the indirect costs of sexual violence, really, because you can't really quantify it. But if you are able to quantify it and look at the amount of time you have probably mental health issues, not able to work, have hospitalization, not able to perform well in school, it is a good it is a cost. um, we have a very high social tolerance of violence against children, and the point is we do not really recognize a child as somebody with their own dreams and aspirations and opinions. You're always somebody's child, somebody's grandchild. You go to somebody's school, you're really not considered a person in your own right. What am I doing? And of course, sexuality is a taboo area. And these are some of the other areas which we look at in terms of the current context of sexual abuse in India and why there is perhaps a very little buy-in by even NGOs. I mean, as Rahul said yesterday, there are not more than a handful of NGOs really working on sexual violence against children. I think, and that is something which we need to question why. Is it an area which makes us uncomfortable? Is it an area we don't know where to start with? Are we looking at constantly the big picture, not looking at the little bits of things which we can do, which will finally connect the dots to make a big picture? So that's something we really need to look at, really. So our whole, if you kind of sum up our ideology or whatever mandate of working with government, is that we believe that all of us have a moral obligation to see that a child is not abused. And if a child is abused, there has to be an appropriate, effective response. We believe that numbers count and that we do need to present a collective front, and what better way than to do work with government on this. As I am aware, there are a few government officials here, but I liken government to being like an elephant. You prod them, they will move. They may move slowly, but they move. And once they incorporate it into their whole, systemic way of thinking and doing things, it's there to stay. We want to make government active stakeholders. We just don't want to say, evolve a child protection policy and let every government institution sign on to it. It doesn't work. There is no buy-in. The point is, there is a mutuality. We want them to understand that they want to see children are protected. They want to see children are happy and healthy and safe. We want that as well. So how do we marry the two? You have, sounds terrible to say this, but it's something like, this is just a metaphor, it just flashed to mind. You have the Aam Aadmi Party, which is extremely activist in bringing corruption to the fore. And how do you marry that with governance? So in the same way, how do you marry our activist approach of towards sexual violence with sustaining it in governance? And I think these are some of the kind of ways we can think of doing it, initiating constructive dialogue. Then this is just really the abstract concepts, and I'm going to tell you all the story behind some of these, how these abstract concepts and constructs have translated into reality when we have worked with government. So the World Day for Prevention of Child Abuse is November 19th, and we use this as a great leverage when we work across the board. One of our stories about using this to put our foot into the door with the police is that we started a system 4 years ago, where we said it's open house. There are 165 police stations in Chennai. On that day, every police station is thrown open to kids of the schools in their neighborhood. So the kids visit the police station, and they get to understand what the police are about, what the police station is about. And it's really an interesting idea. The idea was, we wanted kids to, this myth that all of us grow up with, that the police are ogres. We wanted that myth dispelled, because at some point the police and a child are going to interface either as people who are complainants or people who are in conflict with law at some point. So we would like children to understand what the role of the police is. At the same time, we want police to understand the new profile of clients, so to speak, they're going to get. So far, they've dealt with a whole bunch of other situations. They've really never dealt with children. So how do they deal with children? And one anecdote which comes to mind during this whole exercise is that one child asked the cops in one of the stations, so which is the room you take your bribe in? So, it's interesting. It helps this whole kind of relationship to build up with the cops. And what is more interesting about this whole system is that the first 2 years we drove it. We literally had to drive the thing. But the third year onwards, the police have taken full ownership of it. They initiate it, they do it, and we just kind of do a little bit of hand-holding with them. But besides that, it's entirely their program, and they actually quite resent us even doing a little bit of hand-holding. And that's the kind of change we want to see, that it becomes a part of the system. So this is a visit to the police station. And as part of it, to get them even more interested, we do something called, there's an oratorical competition. There are about 12 zones in Chennai, and 4 kids, 2 from the government schools, 2 from the private schools, are each chosen by the local police jurisdiction. There's a competition in the commissioner's office on my visit to the police station. And the kids talk about their whole experience, and it's very interesting because kids really are very uninhibited in talking about lots of things they see there, which the police probably will cringe about, but it's good for them to hear about. And the second thing is, we have a child rights quiz also, where we ask there is a quiz competition organized with the Quiz Foundation of India, the Chennai chapter, on questions regarding child rights and civic rights. So the kids also learn, as well as they are part of a fun activity. So this is after one of those things. And at the end of it, the winners get to have lunch with the commissioner. So it's a whole process. So, we really try and get the police to understand that they have a larger role in playing with children's lives. Another part of our police initiative is that we managed in 2010 to get the Chennai police to start something called Child Abuse Investigation Teams. They're called KITs. And they work specifically on sexual violence cases. Each zone has a KIT team. And usually all the cases which, even though they register in a regular police station, get transferred for the case team. So there is a certain amount of accountability, there's a certain amount of focus in the training as well. This is the start of our education programs. We work very closely with the education department of Tamil Nadu, and it started with okay, so this was an endeavor we did with the education department where you've seen some of this poster outside actually. So this is the Tamil version of the poster. Every municipal school in Chennai has a board like this, 6 feet by 4 feet, put up right outside the principal's office at the entrance. Now, this was very interesting for us when we first mooted the idea with the Deputy Commissioner Education with the Municipal Corporation of Chennai. He said it has to be near the principal's office. And we couldn't understand why, but we just kind of said, okay, his quirk, let it be, and we just continued. 3 months later, a hard-nosed Times of India reporter decided to find out how successful these were, but it's just a tokenistic thing, and actually went around to random schools across Chennai city to find out how the board was working, whether the board was still up. The board was still up, and she called me back with a very interesting insight, which I had never realized at that point. She said, you know, the board is right next to the principal's office, so the kids feel confident that everybody in the school understands the issue, so they feel more confident about disclosure. So they're talking to the principal and the teachers about lots of things which hitherto they would never have talked about, because if you have something as what should I say, blatant as addressing child sexual abuse right next to the principal's office, they feel confident they can talk about a lot of other things. So this again has become now an annual feature. Every year we change the boards, and it's become there in all the schools. What's very interesting as well is that every deputy commissioner of Chennai who then gets transferred, the next promotion is district collector. They have taken this whole practice into the districts when they have gone as district collectors. So you have this whole initiative now across at least 11 districts in Tamil Nadu. Because every time they became district collector, they would call us and say, you know, those boards which we did when you were deputy commissioners, can we have the same thing across our district? So it really helps. One collector even went to the extent of having it wall painted across all the schools in her particular district. So we're also building bridges with administration. At the end of the day, these deputy collectors are going to be something secretaries in about 20 years from now, and it's important to keep them in good humor. That's something we follow very closely. We follow the postings and transfers of all the administrative officers in Tamil Nadu's cadre. It's very important because it is a very personality-driven culture, and you need to know who you have to nurture and woo and be nice to. This was actually, I'm sorry, this is really out of place in a government talking about governance and how they address child sexual abuse, but this actually set our credibility with schools. This was a program we did with the US consulate. It has no place here, but in a larger scheme of things, it does have. The US consulate had one of the principals of the international school system talking to school principals and managements about having child protection policies in their schools. And it's nothing like peer talking to peer. If I talk to a school principal, they'll come up with a half a dozen reasons why they can't do something. But whereas they have a school principal talking to another school principal, there's very little you can't counter. So this actually, and the snob value of the US consulate, this raised our credibility in the eyes of schools in Chennai at least. Now the corporation then approached us to do a program as a pilot program in one of their zones where they said they wanted the entire 23 schools in that particular zone addressed in terms of personal safety education. One, they wanted the teachers trained, as well as they wanted 4,000 parents covered in trying to understand child sexual abuse. It's a daunting task, but we were kind of decided we might as well try and see what happens. So we did a lot of training with the teachers. There were over 300 teachers were trained over a 6-month period. My colleague Nancy is there. She actually does all the training in Tamil. This was done, and then we decided how do we reach the parents. Most of the parents of kids who go to municipal schools are semi-literate, illiterate, and they also, both of them usually work. So we said, okay, 1 day a week, we will invite the parents, give them a tea, because they usually would be coming straight from work. Both fathers and mothers had to come. And you can't do some snazzy PowerPoint for them, so we decided to use street theater. So we sat with a street theater group and actually formed a script, and it becomes very interactive with the audience, and they relate to you. And then after that, we facilitated a 1-hour discussion on CSA for the parents, and we gave them a takeaway of just a flyer on understanding what's a parent's role to prevent sexual violence. And as part of this, the final part of this presentation, we got all the principals of the 23 schools and the inspectors of all the local stations in those 23 jurisdictions to come for a meeting. So you are building the bridge between the school principal and the police officer, who otherwise never usually meet under except under really difficult circumstances, just to kind of understand from both of their sides what the whole process would be if a child to prevent and address child sexual abuse. So this was a kind of a joint collaborative effort with the cops as well. The next thing is, how do you get to the Corporation of Chennai? So it'd be nice to the mayor. So on November 19th, we also, besides the boards, earlier times, we used to distribute flyers to the kids across all the schools in the elementary schools in the Corporation of Chennai system. And we'd invite the mayor for the presentation. And the mayor loves a photo op, and of course it comes out in the media. So it's a win-win situation everywhere. So that's the mayor about 4 years ago. This is the commissioner giving out the flyers. Now, this is a picture of the district program. You know, this was in Ariyallur district, which otherwise would never have probably addressed child sexual abuse. One of the deputy commissioners, when she became collector there, started the program there as well. Okay, so that was one part in terms of the awareness. But then how do you get the whole system to also understand this is an issue? Now, we have realized that every time it sounds very tokenistic, and I do believe it is tokenistic, and I hate doing it, but we still do it, is to, when you're doing a launch of something, is to invite all the powers that be for the launch. Because in that way, you are educating them as well about the issue, as plus you're making them feel good because, you know, there's again a whole photo op and media op for them. And as I said yesterday, if you don't want to work on child sexual abuse, somebody will think there's something really wrong with you. So it's again a situation to our advantage. So this was a program we did in April 2009, where we talked about how it's important that the school system address child sexual abuse. And this was, Nancy did a media scan of all the articles in the Tamil papers from November 2008 to March 2009, where we were able to prove to them, evidence-based, that every case of school-based abuse reported in the papers was because the school had not responded in an appropriate, timely fashion. There was a morcha in front of the school, and that's when the school had to get involved. So that made them realize that it's better than reaching that stage. They might as well start trying to do something before, you get the media, the local councillor, etc. involved. So this was a meeting we had to start off that whole process with the Secretary of Education, the Director of Education. And the point is, when they come and they have to talk, at least you can be assured they will spend 10 minutes trying to figure out what's happening about child abuse in schools. So, in a kind of way of figuring out how to understand this. As an outcome of this, we also did another very interesting, this was our turning point. I mean, you really clear the pitch with government before you strike. It sounds, these are all kind of ways of strategizing and manipulating, I guess. But in 2011, April 20th, I still remember the date, we did a very interesting workshop in Chennai called Evolving a Child Protection Policy, because we believe child protection policies, each organization has to evolve their own policy. But they usually have a starting problem, is trying to figure out how to go about it. So we invited the government to this, and the Secretary of Education sent her 3 joint directors. And I can tell you, they were sitting like 3 Buddhas right through the whole presentation. And I was just thinking, God, these people are there just in terms of, because they've been ordered to be here. And it's quite unnerving when you're talking to an audience which doesn't react with you, But anyway, they sat there. But obviously, they had absorbed every word of the discussion. They had not contributed very much. Because the next thing we know is that the government has gone into overdrive about addressing child sexual abuse. And one of the most amazing things they did was in 2012, May, they came up with this directive which said that any teacher who's been found guilty of abuse will not just be dismissed, but their B.Ed will be taken care of, will be taken away. They unearthed some rule in the Madras rules of 1935 which had this, and to their advantage used it. So now any teacher found guilty of abuse gets stripped of their B.Ed in Tamil Nadu. So, I mean, they may find employment outside Tamil Nadu, which you can't really help, but at least it doesn't happen in Tamil Nadu. The other interesting thing is, They started using our material at the back of the school notebooks which the government gives out. So this notebook, for instance, is used by over 17.5 lakh kids across Tamil Nadu. And every semester, a new set of books and textbooks comes out, and they have a personal safety message here. Um, and then they've gone to the extent of actually talking about, parts of your body which shouldn't be touched, and talking about safe touch and unsafe touch, and exactly in the language we have it as well. They haven't tried to tinker with the language to try and make it more euphemistic, or try to, dilute it really, which is good. And the thing is, the other interesting thing is now they've started this module where every diet, district education training centers, every district in India has one. Every diet has now included child sexual abuse understanding for the batch of teachers they train. So it's across the 30 districts of Tamil Nadu. Every diet is following this process. And the final icing, really, for us, and this we are very, very proud about, is that in the teacher's handbook, they actually have a whole chapter on addressing child sexual abuse, understanding child sexual abuse and addressing it. And this is from the Tamil Nadu government. So, I mean, the point is the government themselves have addressed it, and we heard off the record, I don't know, but because this is such a sensitive topic, no less than Jayalalitha had to approve every word which went into those things, which meant a great deal to us, yeah. And along with this handbook on understanding, they actually came up with a reporting format for the government schools, where they will say if the abuse happened in the school, this is the flow you would go. If the abuse happened outside the school and the school got to know about it, this is the flow you would follow. So, and it's a very foolproof system, because earlier school teachers would be worried, say, if I mentioned it, then I'm going to be hauled up. But in this case, that's not going to happen, because there's a very clear check and balance right through, right from the teacher to the HM, to the district education officer, to the Directorate of Education. So people do not feel that burden of responsibility of, oh my God, if I report it, this is going to happen to me. And I must tell you, we use POCSO to our advantage in this. As much as I hate mandatory reporting, you can use it judiciously. So we said, mandatory reporting, if you don't report it, you can go to jail, so you better report it. So and the Department of Education very cleverly also used that. So it can be used to leverage if you look at it in different ways. This is the little snippets of stories on safe and unsafe touch, which they've included in the textbooks. They even have a story on internet safety, because that's a huge area of concern for us. And they have a story on cell phone safety and internet and digital safety as well. Have I left out anything? Okay. Now this is with the school police, the schools. This is just to give you a little insight into how the thing. Another huge area of interest for us is policy. We believe that the power lies in policy, really. You can do any amount on the ground, but that's the policy is what really breaks the change. So we got very interested. In 2005, we had a case of one of our youngest cases, 2 years, 9 months old child, who'd been abused by a family friend. And, you can't get really much articulation from such a young child. But one very interesting thing which the father told us was that the abuser spends a lot of time on the net. It so happened at that particular time, I had attended a workshop in Goa done by the British police on understanding computer-facilitated crime against children, and really got to understand the nuances of child sexual abuse images, which is what I prefer to call child pornography. So we then wrote to the internet, and at that time, there was something called the Model Child Pornography Legislation, which was put out by ICMEC, the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children in the US. And they have 5 criteria they look at in terms of how robust a country's child pornography legislation is, whether there's a separate sentencing, whether there's a definition, etc. And India had scored 0, 0, 0 on all 5 of those. So I wrote to the Internet Service Providers Association of India, and I said, hey, what are you guys doing? What is your responsibility? And I was just an NGO. I didn't really understand this medium very much, but I was just writing to them because it seemed logical that ISPs in the US, for instance, Belgium, for instance, are held responsible for child pornography. And it's like I'd set the cat among the pigeons. I mean, they wrote back such nasty letters. I had corporate honchos writing me really nasty letters. And I said, okay, I've touched a raw nerve, so let's take this further. So we wrote to the Information Technology Ministry and we found out what the process was to actually take down a site, and it's hilarious. You have to go there, you have to download a paper, you have to fill it in, you have to send it in, they will look at it, and by that time 20,000 more sites will be up. So we realized that was not going to go anywhere. But during the course of all these, deliberations, we made some very staunch allies in this who thought along the same lines as us. And at that time, the Information Technology Act was being amended. The expert committee to the Information Technology Act had asked for a section on child pornography to be included. Some babu in either the IT ministry or I don't know which ministry had deleted all provisions to child pornography in the legislation. And to us, it seems so ridiculous. Why would you want to delete all provisions? So we got a tip-off about this from one of our allies who was in this expert committee saying, guess what, they've deleted all provisions, now you guys make a noise. And it's a very sad situation that very few of the NGO community, frankly, which whom we had sought to for assistance in this matter, understood the intersection of sexual violence and technology, and they just couldn't understand why we're making such a big deal about it. So what happened was we got an invitation from the Parliamentary Standing Committee to come and present to them. We wrote to them explaining why it should be included, and we were asked to present to them, and we presented to them. There was a very nice chairperson, Nikhil Kumar, who was a chairperson then, who then asked us to overnight come up with a section to be included, which is how 67B got included in the IT Act. So this is 67B in the IT Act. So it does, and before this, I must tell you, from the time that happened to when this act was passed, for 1 year it was kind of going around in Parliament. The whole IT Act was going in Parliament. So we actually did our research to find out which MPs have children below 12 years old. Then we would target them. Then we'd find out which MPs were in the Children's Committee of the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Then we target them. And this kind of research does pay off, because invariably people with children have a slightly different mindset than somebody who's just going to be legislating. This is our work with the judiciary. We do a lot of work training with judiciary across India. And this is the Delhi High Court room, which we were also instrumental in helping set up. This is the child witness room in the Saket Court, and now they have it in Kakaduma and another of the sessions courts in Delhi, where the whole experience is very enabling for a child. The child can either sit in the courtroom and give evidence with the abuser at that last corner, the grilled place, which is a one-way mirror, so the child doesn't have to face the abuser. The child actually comes up through a separate entrance as well. Or the child sits in a separate room and through video evidence from the main court without compromising fair trial standards, gives evidence. This is where the abuser can sit if he wants to see the proceedings in court without the child seeing him. We work very closely with the health sector. This was when we're not very pleased with this picture because we also realize he's one of the most corrupt health ministers we've ever had. But this is Dr. Anbumani Ramdas. When he was health minister, we decided that every one of our work, our projects is directed by our field realities. We were having miserable experiences in hospitals. So we decided that obviously the health sector doesn't know what they're doing because they're not trained in the MBBS curriculum at all. Neither are the nurses. We've had nurses who've told us with great pride how they washed the child before presenting it to the doctor, because she said, how can the doctor see the child with all that mud on the child? So any which way. So we organized, we got a GO passed by the Tamil Nadu government on training doctors in 4 teaching hospitals of Chennai. And this was done with the GO. Otherwise, believe me, it would have been very difficult. And the health secretary himself suggested, he said, why don't you all do it with the GO? So a government order was passed, and we did this training, and this man actually agreed to come as a chief guest. We wrote to him in Delhi, and we said, child abuse is actually a health issue. It has nothing to do with WCD. So you need to come down for this. And fortunately, he is an MP from Tamil Nadu at that time, so he did come down, and it does make a difference. When somebody in the Minister of Health actually starts saying, I don't know very much about child abuse, and isn't that appalling? It does send a message down the line. We work very closely with the media. We engage with the media, so much so we mentor and monitor them. So we have situations now where the media uses us as a repository of any information when they're doing any story on to do with children. They'll call us up and say, what are the angles you think we should take? Or who should we contact for a soundbite if it's about child marriage? And we've actually helped them with, with their other stories. So when we want our favors called in, you can also ask, you can demand your pound of flesh, so to speak. We work with the disability sector. This is a Braille flyer we brought out. The front is the low vision and the back is the Braille version. This is because we believe that kids with disabilities are completely out of purview. Okay, so this is my last slide. This is when we work with traveling sex offenders. And this is how we invite guests for the things. We invite, this is Dr. R.K. Raghavan, who was former CBI director. We got him interested, and after that, doors opened to us with the CBI regarding a lot of cases which were pending with traveling sex offenders. Yeah, and I liken our work with the government like to King Bruce. Like King Bruce, you keep spinning your, the spider, you keep spinning your web, and the web keeps getting pushed away, but you keep starting again, and somewhere this web will continue to remain. Thank you.
With the posters that you all put up in schools, what was the outcome that you could see from children as a result of putting up the posters in schools?
Okay, we actually didn't have Tulur mentioned anywhere in the posters because we do not, any of our things with government, we do not want the organization to be at the forefront. We want government to take ownership. So from what we understand, the teachers got a lot of disclosures from kids. And the idea is to help them be able to handle it, because at the end of the day, we are just an NGO on the outside and be a catalyst for the whole change which has to happen within the system. So the teachers were able to handle it. In fact, they would call us up occasionally and say, okay, in this particular case, what do we do, etc. But the idea was that it would be a way on which kids could understand that they could talk about this issue, and that and that's why we gave the training for the teachers. Before this whole thing, I mean, there is no way we would even have started this without giving the adults around a child some sort of understanding of what is expected of them, how they should handle it, which is why we're very happy with the handbook. Because now with the handbook, it just takes it out of our hands completely. Every teacher has to have the handbook. Their promotions are based on tests on the handbook and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and Nancy, like to say something
Can I,
as well?
sorry. Can I get in here? Oh, okay, right.
I'll just add one more thing.
Oh,
and
sorry,
you can
sorry.
talk.
Mhm.
So another part of the education efforts by the education department that is happening is all these trainings that we have been doing with education department started all the way back from 2004 onwards. Now the education department, they have started doing their own trainings now that they have developed these handbooks for teachers, and across Tamil Nadu, region wise, the education department has started the trainings. So they have also created set of trainers from the teachers. So they will go to every block, every village level and do the trainings, so that the adults are also prepared about these topics. So it's not that just the boards are there and children will look at the boards. It is completely institutionalized, where there's going to be ongoing trainings for all the teachers as well.
And the other thing is we've actually given them PowerPoint. So the same message goes out to everyone. That's very important, that the same uniform, consistent message goes out. So we even created that kind of material for them. Dr. Sen?
Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate you. I mean, it's absolutely fabulous. I can't tell you how impressed I am.
Oh, anything to close down Tulur as fast as possible. Yeah.
And in fact, it also gives me a lot of hope. Yesterday, we were talking about how not to be too skeptical about the government, and I was wondering what you were talking about. I understand now. But tell me, how long has it taken you to kind of soften up, these different avenues?
Working with government is a whole different ballgame altogether. You need to find personalities whom you work with, and you need to clear the pitch, irrespective of who the personality is there. As I said, you keep doing your little awareness efforts year after year. When you find somebody receptive to it, you go after them. You give them an idea. You give them, and the thing is not to thrust too much at them. It's to give them little bits to chew from. And I have realized the importance of evidence-based material. You give them the facts as they are. You tell them of the 15 cases between November 2008 and April 2009, 15 of them involved teachers. You're talking about professional perpetrators here. You're talking about, instead of suspending and giving them a new bunch of kids, you need to dismiss them. You actually giving them the ideas without actually saying that this is my idea. Let them take the idea, ownership of the idea. That really goes a long way. It's been a long haul, yeah.
Thank you.
I'm Shubhada from TISS. So, I've been wanting to know about Tulir's work, and, here it is. Tamil Nadu government has been one of the governments that has been quite progressive in a manner of speaking around a whole lot of issues, particularly around sexuality. So one is, the transgenders, the recognition of the third gender as... and not recently,
Yeah,
few years back.
historically.
So knowing, what the way Tamil Nadu government works and who are the people there, what is the characteristic that has made these things possible? What are the lessons for other states, for example?
I think
How
a lot
does
of it
one-
has to do with the political movement, ma'am. We have a history of the self-respect movement. I mean, it sounds terrible to say that, but the Dravidian parties in the 1960s are very into, like, which is why, like, for instance, when the Mandal Commission was going on, every in Tamil Nadu was like, what's the big deal? We've been having 69% reservation for the last 40 odd years. So I think the whole political history of Tamil Nadu has led to a more equitable situation in many ways, actually, you know. I don't think you can divorce that from other social movements which are happening, or the social thinking which is happening there. So I do think that's one, and we've had good bureaucrats, I think. Oh, the Delhi courts heard about our work in Chennai. We managed the children's room in the Chennai High Court. So I didn't speak about that, but didn't have time. But they heard about our work, and we actually document all our cases, and where the gaps and the lacunae and stuff are. So the Delhi courts asked us to come and present, and then they asked us to help them with their child witness room. So it's so ironic. Tamil Nadu doesn't have a child witness room, but Delhi has a child witness room. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. So, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Rupal Vora, and I'm from SIS College. We have 6 different counseling courses, as well as teacher education and special education courses. And I'm in charge of the counseling courses and short-term and full-year Bombay University courses. And though it's not in the syllabus, we do call the foundation every year to do sessions on child sexual abuse for all our teacher education, special education, and counselor trainees. And you'll be very happy to know that the revision of the postgraduate diploma in counseling, which enables students to become counselors after doing this course, the revision was there, so we insisted on giving a special, some suggestions, and we were invited for as special invitees. And we insisted that child sexual abuse be a model in the special area paper.
Excellent.
And you'll be very happy to know that they have agreed.
Good.
So now it will be in the syllabus, and though we've reached the revision committee, the next step is now the Board of Studies, but at least they have agreed, so I'm sure the Board of Studies, and after this we are going to try to incorporate it in our, we have another Bombay University course called Diploma in Early Childhood Care and Education, which is for pre-primary teachers, training of pre-primary teachers. And with the only college in Bombay having these 2 Bombay University courses, and we are trying to get it in that course, though we are teaching it, but we would like to have it on paper.
Good, and I hope you're not going to get, I'm sorry, Rahul, but I hope you're not going to get foundation each time to come and do the training, and that you all will do the training yourselves.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the important part of sustainability. Yeah. Any other questions?